Hi, hey, hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Grace. I read a lot of books, obviously that's why I'm on Booktube. I initially started as a booktoker, but I tend to deep dive a little bit more than what they like over there, so I ventured over here. There's something really important you need to know before I go ahead with this video, and that is that in the whole time I've been in the social media book space, I have always vowed to never read a particular book and a particular series. If a book has too much hype around it, I find it so off-putting. I find it that it's a book that I want to tear apart and I almost want to destroy it because it just can't be that good that so many people love it. This book in particular, but also this entire series, is like god tier level. Especially on Booktok, you have got almost cults dedicated to this book, to this author, to this series. And I vowed I would never read it. I've made so many videos saying I will never ever read that book. So can we please question as to why ACOTAR is now in my hands, in my possession. A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas is sitting here. I'm going to start it and I'm going to take you guys along for the journey with me. Not just that, but I actually committed. I figured if I was going to do one, I might as well be ready to do them all. I can't tell you why in particular I've always been put off of this, outside of the fact that when somebody comes onto my page and they're like, oh my God, you have to read ACOTAR. ACOTAR is the best thing in the world. ACOTAR, ACOTAR, ACOTAR. It puts me off. Okay, I'm like, whoa, no, don't want to know. Why have I suddenly got a call for it now? I don't know. Maybe it's because I want to prove to myself that it's just not that good. Am I going to be swallowing my words? Potentially, but we shall see. Buckle up and come for the ride because I'm going to update you as much as I can as we go along. Okay, I've just finished chapter 1 and I've got to be honest, the style of writing is definitely not something I would normally enjoy. It feels like it's going to be a bit of a struggle. It feels like it's a book that I'm potentially going to get a little bit aggravated with. There's something about the tone of voice in this that Sarah has used that I'm just not keen on so far, but I am only one chapter in. I'm going to try and not be overly critical and give it a shot because that is only a couple of pages, but I am about to head out, so this is going to have to wait. Okay, time for a little update on ACOTAR. So I am now about to start chapter 5. So that's 42 pages in. I've been reading this since yesterday. I've not had much reading time today, to be fair, but I could have found some had I wanted to. That is saying quite a lot at the moment. It's really not gripping me. I can't obviously judge it fairly this shortly in, but 5 chapters deep by now, I would want to expect to understand a little bit about the character, a little bit about the world, and so far I don't feel like I have that. We've met Feyre, who is living with her 2 sisters and her dad. Her dad seems to have some kind of disability. They live in the woods, very, very poor. Feyre is like the provider of the family. Feyre kills and skins this wolf who she believes is just a normal wolf, goes and sells his skin, and then a fairy, I hope I've said that right, turns up and basically exiles her from her land, and she gets sent to live in their land where humans like her can't kind of survive. That's the gist of what's happening so far. The writing style, I'm not attracted to. It's not exciting me. It's not making me feel buzzy. And I generally know quite quickly with a book if I'm going to love it or if I'm not. I'm going to be blunt. If this didn't have the hype around it, I would have DNF'd it. I DNF normally within the first 50 to 100 pages. So I'm now, as I said, 42 pages in, and already I'm a bit like, ugh, this is like a slog for me to get through. Is it going to change? I'm hoping it pulls through, but at this point, I just don't know. It just feels a bit bland. It just feels kind of a bit bleak, and Feyre just doesn't, she's not a character. She's not, there's absolutely no character development at all of her at this point in time, which is quite surprising 5 chapters in. I'm not stoked really to sit and read this tonight, But I'm going to, and I'm determined to get through this. I'm not going to DNF it. I'm going to make myself read it. And if I have to swallow my words on ACOTAR, then I will swallow my words. But at this point in time, it is leaving me feeling a bit deflated. It is. I'm going to go and have a bath. It's now like 7 o'clock in the evening. It's Saturday. It's dark. It's cosy. I'm going to cuddle up in bed with my wife. I'm going to get my head in this. I am going to try and consume as much as possible. Ideally, I want to get to at least the 100-page mark. And then I feel like I can start gauging it quite fairly from that point forward, but we shall see. So far, ACOTAR, you're not pulling me in, babe. You're not. I have so many questions. I am now on page 116. I did not make it to page 100 last night. Let's go talk. Let's go and have a chat about this. We need to have a deep chat because I am struggling. I'm struggling my way through this. I have so many thoughts and feelings wrapping around in my head right now. Primarily, number one is I just don't get it. And this was my fear with me reading ACOTAR, that I just wouldn't get it. I wouldn't understand it at all. But alas, we are here. As I said, we're 116 pages in. I think we're in chapter 13. Where's the world building? It is so limited. It feels almost like it's verging on non-existent. At times I feel like I, as the reader, I'm just meant to know and understand this world with such limited information. I'm really struggling to actually put myself mentally into wherever Feyre, Tamlin, Lucian are. I can't for the life of me picture their location, what they're doing. Page 50, we need to dissect this a little bit. So this beast was not a man, not a lesser fairy. He was one of the high fae, one of the ruling nobilities. How are we meant to know that? That is just, it feels like just sheer info dumping. What background, what information do we have as readers to go off that fae are even in societal brackets, that there's lesser fae, there's high fae? We don't even know what fae is. But yet we're just dumped with this little bit of info that we're meant to understand as a reader. That is, for me, is irritating. When it comes to fantasy, I do think world building is incredibly important. It's one of the most important parts of the story, is to get yourself as a reader engrossed into that world, because obviously we're going to be dealing and talking with things that we may not necessarily understand. And ACOTAR so far is just not it. It's not hitting that mark for me, which is incredibly frustrating. But then it kind of gets worse. So there's like these little comments throughout about Tamlin's ears and what Tamlin's ears represent, and how that his ears are what makes him fae, okay? Or visibly fae. But they don't tell us what the ears are until page 71. We finally find out on page 71 that because Tamlin has got pointy ears, that means he has fae ears. And I was like, why has it taken so long to get us to this point? Why could we not just have been descriptive about the ears? There's enough bolted on sentences in this book that just don't have any place there, like make next to no sense. I'm sure at one point Feyre was talking about some situation and then it completely flipped for one paragraph about how she used the last of her dad's coppers to buy a bow and arrow at home, and then it went back to the situation again in the next paragraph, and I was like, where did that come from? Like, if we can bolt that on, surely we can give a description about some bloody ears that clearly we need as readers. This bit, right, this bit really got me last night, because I was like, this was at the point where I was like, I've got to stop reading because I'm getting aggravated. So page 73, we're going to go right to the last paragraph. I might take on animal form, but I am civilised, Feyre. So he did remember my name. He has said your name multiple times already. He's already said your name. He knows your name because he keeps saying it. So why have we pointed out, oh, he'll leave it. At least he remembers my name. He's literally said it a couple of pages before. He said it whilst you were sitting around a dinner table. That doesn't make any sense. Why is that in there? It's more useless information when we really could do with some useful information. The irritation. There's also this thing that it's trending in this book where there's a lot of commentary about movements like an animal. And I'll say, oh, his movement was animal-like. The turn of his head was animal-like. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And there's a lot of instances where we're talking about the fact that these guys seem to be more animal than anything else, or their movements are animal-like, and it's not. What animal? What animal? Are we moving like a small bird, or are we moving like a mountain lion? I swear to God, I'm not just picking holes at this point. It genuinely, the way that this is written and reading feels frustrating for me because I don't want to have to pick so many plot holes in a fantasy. I want to be able to get lost in the world, and what I'm finding is I'm reading this and it's like almost like my eyes are getting tired. I'm 100% shutting off and having to stop every few pages. I think it's going to take me quite a long while. I've just got makeup all over it, fabulous. Unless the pace starts picking up and unless the writing style actually starts to improve, because I'm just going to say it how it is and what I think, but I do feel like this is quite poorly written at this stage. I know that's going to piss some people off, but I do. Okay, I'm sorry. Not sorry, I have to be honest. Where we're at now, let's give an overall update of where we're at in the story. So Feyre is now living in Prythian. I hope I've said that right. Which is where the Fays live and the Fays kind of control. Now, she's living here because she killed a Fae, so therefore her life has to be sacrificed in exchange. And that sacrifice works by either her being killed or she can live the rest of her days in Prythian, in the Feyland, where humans aren't, tolerated, liked, or really are going to survive. What is confusing to me is she has killed this Fae that is part of this household, part of this, I don't know, court, whatever. So in exchange, she's got to give them her life, basically. However, she's living a life of fucking luxury. She is living a life of pure luxury, and I don't understand that. So you're telling me she kills one of their kind, and then therefore, in exchange, she goes from living in pure poverty, literally having to hunt for food for her family, for them to survive, no money at all, clothes that are falling apart and don't even fit her, to living a life of pure luxury, where her family on the outside are also now taken care of and no longer have to worry about food, about money, about warmth, about anything, because Tamlin, who, she's clearly killed someone connected to him. God forgive me, I can't work out if it's his brother or not. I'm not 100% sure. But Tamlin is taking care of her and her family for the rest of her life. Someone make that make sense. That doesn't make any sense. Surely, if you have knocked off a member of the High Fae, who are clearly very elite high standards, you would be living a life of like a prisoner or in a bad way. Why would they take you in, pay for you? Like that's not settling well with me, and there's very limited information or explanation as to why that's happened and why she's where she is. I'm sorry, Sarah, you lost me on that one, babe, because that is just not making any sense. It's really not. Also, we keep talking about a cauldron, but I don't know why we're talking about a cauldron. So it's like almost like the cauldron's like a god kind of situation. I don't know if it is or not. I can't make sense of it. That's not been explained or clarified. Essentially, I feel like I'm reading a book that there's no pacing to it. Nothing's really happened. She killed a wolf and now she's living with these two guys, but we don't really know who these two guys are. There's other monsters out in the forest, and that's about it. She refused to wear a dress and she's wearing a tunic and trousers instead. That is what I feel like I've read so far. Is this YA? Is it YA? Because it's marked as like passionate, violent, sexy and daring, action-packed fairy tale. There's no action. I'm 100 and odd pages in. Come on. Do me a favour. I need to check if this is marked as YA or not, because if it is, that's my error. But it's so slow. There's nothing happening. I'm going to try and get through as much of it as I can today, kind of just because I want it over and done with at this point. It's not what I was expecting. It's not. I was expecting something super fast-paced, super like grippy, churning, page turning, and it's none of those things. It's not really doing anything for me, and I'm wondering, am I going to get right the way through? And it's one of those books where actually it could have done without a huge bulk, or are we suddenly going to start to world build? Like, these guys are magic. Why are they magic? What is their magic? She can taste or smell their magic, metallic tang of their magic, but we don't know what their magic is. We know that Tamlin can transform into animals and he can turn other people into animals by the looks of it, but we don't actually know what their magic is. What is the magic system? Is there a magic system? Please give me some information, because this is frustrating the shit out of me. So I'm now on page 156, chapter 18. And so far, once again, not much has actually happened. The furthest action we now have was Feyre has just kind of been saved by Tamlin after she went into the woods and she got into a sticky situation with like another Fey mystical creature kind of thing, like a bad creature. Now I think so far we've met 3 of these different breeds of creature. Not one of them has stuck in my mind long enough to understand what they are. So what I'm finding, there's not like enough descriptions of the creatures so that I can picture them. They're not spoken about at depth enough for me to understand them. So I think we've got a puka, a boogie, or a surreal, something like that. I can't even name them off the top of like my head. It's definitely something I would call this a slow burn for sure, without a doubt. But it's an unfortunate slow burn, and there's just not enough. Like I said earlier, there's not enough world building, there's not enough information. All round, it just feels really, really disappointing. Even at this stage I'm still struggling to understand the characters, the world, the surroundings, the creatures. It's just not painting any picture for me in my head. Not just that, but there's a couple of other things that are kind of irking me. So say, for example, on page 118, Feyre says that she trusts Lucien because he's not pretending to be something that he's not. In the next breath, says that she doesn't trust Tamlin because Tamlin is Fae. He's a fairy. I hope I'm saying that right. Is it fairy or fairy? Whatever it is, really doesn't matter. But that's why she doesn't trust Tamlin. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lucien and Tamlin are the same. They're both Fae. So if you don't trust one, why do you trust the other when they're exactly the same breed, race? I'm not sure how to phrase that one. But I find that really, really quite confusing. Like, morally, it's not adding up and it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, oh, I trust you, but I won't trust your friend who's exactly the same as you. She's just got it out for Tamlin. She doesn't like him, and there's kind of not really many reasons as to why, apart from the fact that she had to make a deal with him. There's also, right, a part where on page 150, another fairy from a different court, I think it was from the Summer Court, has been attacked, been injured by this mythical she. We haven't met the she yet, but we keep referring to the she. The she has removed his wings and he's passing. He's having a hard time. That's not very nice, that scene, to be fair. In one instance, it says that whoever she was hadn't just taken his wings, she'd ripped them off, right? The next sentence, blood oozed from the black velvety stumps on the fairy's back. The wounds were jagged, cartilage and tissue severed in what looked like uneven cuts, as if she'd sawed off his wings bit by bit. But ripping off is completely different to sawing something off bit by bit. Like, I'm not trying to overanalyze this. Actually, no, I am. I do believe that we should be deep diving into books and we should be kind of paying attention to these things. To rip something off is very different to saw something bit by bit. They're two completely different methods, but yeah, they're a sentence apart. There's a lot of holes and there's a lot of poor writing. Later on, a couple of pages later, we're talking about Tamlin. Now, bear in mind that on page 118, she says she doesn't trust Tamlin. Okay, Tamlin's done some nice things for her at this point, and Tamlin's kind of, I suppose, trying to win her trust a little bit. But she doesn't trust him, she doesn't really like him. So why, all of a sudden, I think it's around page 154, did Tamlin become Tam? Why is he suddenly shortened and why has he suddenly got like a little cute nickname version of his name? That hadn't been spoken about before. That was brand new. The way that this is written feels incomplete. And I know that's quite a bold statement and I know it's possibly going to upset some people, but I am really struggling with this. Like, I'm now on day number... When did I start reading this? This is day number 3. I'm on day number 3, I think, of reading this, and I'm only 156 pages in. It's Sunday. I have had nearly all day to read this and I just haven't wanted to. Like, I genuinely am struggling to pick it up and I'm struggling to go through it. Nothing is happening. Nothing's making sense. None of the characters feel likeable. None of them even feel like they have a personality yet. I feel frustrated. Like, I just want to throw it against a wall, and I've got so many other books behind me that I'm so desperate to read. So I'm going to try and delve into it even more tonight, and I will update you tomorrow because this is a long book as well. It's 400 odd pages I've got to try and get through. Let's hope it starts to make sense soon. We are now on day number 4 of trying to get through this book. I think I'm on page 208, chapter 23. I didn't video yesterday just because I just kind of wanted to try and sink into it, and I still struggled. It got a little bit grittier in some spaces with Lucian and his backstory, which was quite interesting. But I still just don't feel invested in the characters. I still, like, nothing has happened. I probably could have read 50 pages and got to the same point. A lot of the way that the sentences are constructed are just non-conducive. Sometimes I'm getting confused between who's talking and who's not. And just in general, I'm really struggling to get to grips with it and actually feel connected with it as a book. Good morning. It is the morning after the night before. And I actually did try and read as much of ACOTAR as I could last night. It was still a struggle to try and focus. My wife's currently watching the Menendez, or I can't pronounce. She's currently watching that documentary, and I'm finding myself actually gravitating towards watching that, which is saying something because I hate TV. That's how much this book is holding my attention span. But nonetheless, we have now met Rhysand. Feyre has been sent back home. I can't lie, her being sent back home was a bit of a confusing step for me because I was like, that's so sudden. What I'm finding is either nothing is happening at all, there's like no world building, there's like no explanations, or it all happens quickly and then it's like, whoa, wait a second, I'm having to like flick back on pages to understand things, which is really frustrating. We're talking about fairies glamouring things or people, which from what I can tell is like they basically have this magic where they cover things up, so a fairy will suddenly look like a human, or a fairy can like disappear and a human can't see it, and it's almost like a veil kind of thing. But it's just so poorly explained. I'm left sitting there like, well, what is this? What is glamour? Which obviously as a reader, it's just becoming more and more frustrating. Like, it didn't even ramp up last night, but I did find that at least the story started to develop a bit. The development of it right now is just so slow. Nothing just feels synced together nicely. Even so, like, the construction of some sentences is just leaving a little to be desired for me. They're not sitting quite comfortably. They're not reading comfortably. They're just kind of, sometimes there's like words just bolted on in places. I'm like, where did that come from? Why is that there? She was out, where was she? She was out in a glen, or she was out somewhere. And then suddenly she refers with Lucian
was it with Lucian? Or something. She refers to something she does last week as if we know about it. She's like some party thing, and they've got fairy wine, which is obviously a little bit weird, like wilder and stronger than normal mortal wine. And then there's like this reference to last week when she took something and she ended up hallucinating. But it's as if we knew about it. And I was like, I wish we did know about that, because that sounds a lot more fun than you just constantly stressing about whether you're going to paint or not that day and where Tamlin is. Give me some hallucinogenics, because honestly, I need some grit in this story right now to keep me going. That was really frustrating. I don't like anything that's written to the reader as if the reader should know it already exists. I find that quite aggravating. That didn't land too well with me. But then also there's the way that things are written that just make me cringe and just making my insides curl up. So the delicate arch of his ears made me pause. What? Something about his soft tone made me want to purr. Are you a cat? Are we okay? What do you mean you wanted to purr? At this point, I'm trying my hardest to like find the light. I so almost DNF'd last night. I did, but if it wasn't for me doing this video, it would have been long gone. It genuinely would have been long gone. I would have been like, no, I'm over this. I think I'm over halfway. I can't believe it's taken me. I'm on day 5 of reading this book, and there's part of me that just wants to take the whole day off work and just snuggle up and read the damn book and just try and get it over and done with. I have got so many other books that are staring at me from my shelves that are like, read me. I'm so sorry, I can't. I'm like neglecting you right now. Am I gonna be cancelled after this video? I feel like I might be. I'm hoping it starts to pick up. I'm on page 255, I think it is. 255, 256. Chapter 29. That's really nice, that. First time I've used that, sorry. It's going to be a battle now to get to the end of this. And the worst thing is I know there's another, 4 books after. And Grace's Book Nook, who is one of my absolute favourite Booktok babes, texted me yesterday. She WhatsApped me and she was like, Grace, it does get better. She was like, from the second book onwards, it gets better. I'm like, from the second book? So you're telling me I've got to wade through the shit of the first book to get to the good bit? Hey, I'll be back later with more updates. My bowels turned watery. That is possibly the worst line I have ever read in a book. What? I genuinely sat there and was like, I'd done like a quadruple time. Did she shit herself? Did she actually shit herself? Or like, did she just get that internal urge of, oh my God, it's gonna happen? Like, what do you mean her bowels turned watery? That is a horrific description. And I don't think I will ever get over that. I have nothing. I am now... Okay, we're near the end. I'm on page 308. She has now gone back into Prythia, whatever it is. She's now kind of like face to face with the High Queen, and Tamlin is not himself, and she's got to do these 3 tasks over 3 months to prove her love. And this isn't easy for me to follow. It's not easy for me to make sense. The pacing of the book just feels completely off. It's described on the front as passionate, violent, sexy and daring. So far, I've not really seen any passion. It's definitely not sexy. Violence, there's a little bit right now, but, you know, a big part of the book, there's none. Daring, I don't know. Unless this dramatically changes in the final, 100 or so pages, I'm just not enjoying it. I'm kind of gutted because I really wanted it to prove me wrong. And there's been a couple of points where it got a little bit exciting, where it got like a little bit better pace. As a whole, I'm finding that I'm having to like double back, check things. Did I read that correctly? Go back onto a few pages. Is there information that I'm missing? Trying to make sense of it. And just overall, the flow of the book, it's not nicely flowing. For example, my previous book that I finished before this was Fae Bound. That was such a lovely flowing book. for a fantasy. It just flowed, even though there was things that obviously I didn't understand. I felt like I was digesting it, and I felt like I was understanding. I felt like I was in the world. I can't even picture myself in this world, and that I'm finding really, really hard. So my bowels are my bowels are watery. Just sent me over the edge. I'm gonna make a cup of tea and try and wham my way through this at this point. Honestly, if she's got watery bowels, I think she needs to get that checked, and she needs a bit of outbluff, because that was one of the worst writing descriptions I've ever encountered in my reading life. Guys, we made it. ACOTAR, I finished it. I finished it last night. Before I go ahead and give you my thoughts and my feelings and my actual review on this book, we really need to make it very, very clear, because I'm so aware of like the cult following and how heavily people love this book. I already got a taste of it last night on TikTok when I revealed the book that I'd been reading and was welcomed into the cult, quite literally. Everybody's reviews, feelings, experiences are subjective. They are personal to them. It does not mean that they are slamming you. I've been through this already before. I don't see why I should have to explain myself, actually. Reading is subjective. Let's just keep it there. I can't believe it took me pretty much a week straight to get through this. It took me 7 days to finish this. I have so much I need to say. We have so much we need to talk about, because I'm sorry, what is it? What was this? What did I read? What was the journey? And why did it happen? I've actually got some notes. My brain was so haywire last night when I'd finished this. So we're going to go through little sections of the book together. What I thought, how I felt, my experience. Now, first and foremost, world building. I have been consistently told you need to read book 2 because book 2 is where it gets better. Hear me out on this. If I'm reading a series, book 1 needs to be the carrier of that series. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be the best book of the series, but it needs to be that strong that it can pull me in, that it makes me want to come back for more, that it makes me want to purchase, buy and read the entire series. She says when she literally has the whole box set sitting just here. That's what book 1 should be doing. Book 1 should be wrapping me up in the world. It should be teaching me all kinds of things. It should be allowing me to envision the characters, where they are, their systems, This was not it. For me, ACOTAR was not it. There was no world building for me in this, or very limited world building. It's not fair for me to say there was none. It was very, very limited world building, and the world building that did exist felt poor. I'm going to reference back to Feybound, which was the book that I just finished before this. The world building in that actually felt really deep but digestible. I could picture the characters, I could picture the creatures, I could picture the world, I could understand their magic system. In this, I didn't have any of that. It got to the point where the writing was actually so conflicting. I have no idea what Feyre looks like. I have no idea what Tamlin looks like. I don't understand their magic system, and I don't understand half of the stuff they were talking about. It just felt like it had become a story with huge plot holes. If you're going to put a magic system in the book, I need to know more about this magic system. It's not enough that you can smell the metallic tang of it if you're a mortal. I need to understand what that magic system is, why it's there, what it's going to do. We kept referencing to a cauldron. What is the cauldron? I don't know what the cauldron is, because not once is that explained. It's just like a word, like our God. It's almost cauldron was used instead of the word God a lot, but there was no depth to that at all. Overall, I really struggled to get into this world. I still, as I said, I can't envision it. I can't picture it. I don't know what the characters look like. I don't know what the world looks like itself. I don't know if they're in some mystical world or if it's in like a mortal kind of realm. That one was completely lost on me. And that's really unfortunate, because in the first book, that needs to be strong. And that's what the carrier book is. That's what I mean when I say it needs to be a carrier. Then from there, we're going to start talking about the actual characters themselves. Now, we've got the female main character, who is Feyre. Feyre starts off as somebody that feels quite strong, quite assertive, quite knowledgeable of herself, and ends up just meh. Like, she ends up so almost weak and blank, and like she's lost who she was at the start. She became more and more insufferable as time goes by. Her thoughts, feelings were all conflicting. One minute she absolutely hates Tamlin, and the next minute she's wondering where he is, what he's doing, what colour he's wearing today. It doesn't make any sense to me, and unfortunately, as a female lead, I didn't find her likeable. I didn't find her interesting. And I also didn't find that she developed. Like, her character development felt incredibly limited. Okay, she ended as a queen, but there was no development in her character that allowed her to carry that title of queen. She won a few challenges. She won 3 challenges, but she was assisted through those challenges. So it's not like she was developing. She felt completely messy and not well-rounded as a main character for me. We then have Tamlin, who I don't understand what was likeable really about Tamlin. It felt like he was a bit groomy. It felt like he groomed her a little bit. He seemed to have some anger issues unresolved that popped up every so often. Not too often, but they did pop up. Again, he lacked any depth. He lacked any sparkle. Okay, cool, he's hot. He's hot underneath a mask. That's about the most that I got from him. Lucian, who, he's a bit of a wet weep in some places, but I did actually feel quite sorry for him when I got to know his background, his story, where he'd come from, things like that. He was one of the characters that probably felt the most likeable in the whole book. Again, he still wasn't like a strong enough vibe for me to latch onto and really associate myself with as a character. Then the last one is Rysand, however you say his name. Why are we fascinated by him? He literally comes along, he completely abuses her personal space, he completely makes her feel like shit, he treats her really poorly, and then he essentially gets her so drunk every single night, makes her dance for him in front of other people. She's obliterated to the point she can't remember anything, and we as the reader also don't know what's going on because she can't remember. And he makes her bare her body and her skin to everybody. He's basically owning her and controlling her, and that feels like it was romanticised. In many senses, ironically, he was the strongest character in this book. He was the one that carried the characters because he had the most character. He had the most depth. He had the most kind of little pizzazz and something. But he was plain abusive. And that's almost romanticised. I was sitting there reading it like, are we okay? Why is this all right? We've also got, is it a Manrantha or something? The High Queen, who she couldn't decide what colour her hair was from one day to the next. She was an absolute evil cow that she had no reason to be. It's not even like it was kind of understandable. Her backstory made no sense to me. Like, she didn't have a single redeeming quality, which I know that's the point because she's a bad character. But at least give me some understanding on why she's like that. What happened to her? Where she came from? How did she even gain on this power? It wasn't even explored. It was just plonked in there. Now is a bit that some people probably aren't going to like, but these are the issues that I found within A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I'm going to be upfront about these issues. I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought, exactly what I felt, because it does require some honesty. And I'll do this with all books. It could be a 5-star book. It could be one of my favourites, A Little Life. I'm still going to tell you the issues that are in that book, okay? So let's just put that out there. First and foremost, ableism. I am never down for ableism, ever. I have DNF'd books based on ableism in the past. This book is littered with it. These 3 sisters, Feyre included, are angry with their dad because he's disabled. because he's disabled, he's got a completely mangled leg, so therefore he can no longer go and provide. And they're angry with him for that. To the point where one of the sisters completely hates the dad, but we don't understand why she hates him. From what I can tell, he's always tried. He ended up in a really muddled situation. He ended up disabled, and now they're all angry at him. That, for me, screams ableism. That was not well written at all, and it actually kind of put my back up a little bit. We then have the situation where, and there's a bit of a trigger warning here, I feel like assault and sexually suggestive behaviour is actually really glorified in this book. So first off, we've got Tamlin that bites Feyre's neck because he can't control himself. I swear he says something to her about following orders as well. So he bites her neck hard enough to mark her, even though she says no, please don't do that. He continues to do it, and then he blames her for that. That's glorifying assault. Then we've got Rysand, as I've already mentioned, who is supplying her with drink so much every night that she is obliterated, blackout, can't remember anything, making her dance for him in front of other people and showing everybody her body by painting her and making her wear scraps of fabric. Is that not abusive? And we're romanticising that. Oh, how lovely. He's saving her. He's not saving her. He's literally abusing her. I'm sorry. That I found really conflicting, and maybe I just read things different to other people, but I didn't see any of that as cutesy. I saw all of that as quite troublesome and quite dangerous writing. We then have the romance, where I'm still searching. I'm still searching for the romance in this book. We go from Feyre hating Tamlin, can't stand Tamlin, awful character, don't trust him, to in love with him. Almost like that. I'm in love with him. It's just happened. And even when she's hating him, she's constantly thinking about him. It's almost like from the second he kidnapped her, because that's essentially what he did. He kidnapped her. She saw him as a love pursuit. The romance is just it's so dry, but yet they fell in love in 0.6 seconds. There's nothing sizzling in there. There's nothing heated. There's nothing building. There's nothing passionate. It just goes from there to whoa very, very quickly. And the sheer volume of red flags that are littered throughout this and then disguised as romantic, just as a whole, I did find that the writing felt very, very clumsy. It did feel clumsy. As I said a little while back in this video, you have a situation with a fairy where its wings have been taken off by Amramramtha, whatever her bloody name is. In one sentence, they're ripped off, and literally the next sentence, they're sawed off bit by bit. She gets stuck in mud, and it's described as slick, but slick would mean you were slipping. My bowels turned watery. I will never get over that. But the writing itself is clumsy, it's not cohesive, it doesn't flow. I was having to double back on myself a lot. I was having to go back and think, what? That doesn't make any sense. It's not even well written. And I know so many people are going to argue with me on that, and that's fine, because that's your opinion and your perception, and you are absolutely allowed it, the same as I am absolutely allowed mine. But for me, it was not well written. We had a ton of unnecessary information in this. It was a ton of info dumping that didn't add to the story. It didn't make sense and could have so easily been taken out. We could have dealt with Tamlin and Feyre in the first quarter of the book and then actually put some action into the last 3 quarters by taking them under the mountain. That would have been absolutely fine. We would have got exactly the same result at the end if that had happened, with a lot less info dumping and a lot less wasted words that just added nothing to the story, in my opinion. The pacing and the structure just felt so off. I couldn't understand the pacing. There's slow burn and then there's boring your reader to death. And that is what I felt had happened in this. It almost felt like it was manipulative in the fact that it was so boring. I was sitting there kind of thinking like, when is this going to, it picks up in the last 100 pages. I shouldn't have to read 300 pages of non-consequential just for it to pick up. You can't disguise a lot of this as world building because it's not. In my opinion, you cannot expect somebody to read 400 plus pages of a book and then lead them into the second book because it's going to be so much better. Like the pacing, the structure, the characters, the world building, it all just made no sense for me. I was like, where is it? The same as people keep describing this as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Where? I think there's an effort there. I do. Doesn't mean I think it was a valiant effort. It's just an effort. There's two things that bugged me the absolute most with this book. And I feel like almost like they were trying to pull the wool over my eyes with this. Now, this is one of the most hyped books of recent years. I don't think this book would have had the hype that it has if it wasn't for Booktok or Booktube or the social media platforms. I'm not going to lie to you. Out of the tens of thousands of fantasy books out there, it doesn't deserve to be at the top, in my opinion. And maybe I'm just reading it from a different perspective. And like I said, I do tend to deep dive into books a lot. But there was one thing that was missing in this book, and it really actually got under my skin. I'm part of a small minority, okay? I am gay. I have got a wife. Where was the diversity? I'm sorry, Sarah J. Maas, where's the diversity? I did not see one ethnically coloured character. I did not see one gay character. The one character you had that was disabled, you smashed with ableism. Where is the diversity in this book? Because it just does not exist. All the characters are the same. They all have the same skin tone. They all have the same sexuality. There's no diversity listed in here at all. And that's so disappointing as a reader. I don't expect a token gay character to be put in there. I really don't. But what I do expect is to have diversity across your field, in your book, in your worlds. It's really not difficult to just be inclusive in this day and age with everybody. It's so not hard to do that. The last thing that bugged me was the title. A Court of Thorns and Roses made no sense to the context of the book, to the world of the book, to the characters within the book, to the court of the book. It made no sense. Spring Court does not equal Thorns and Roses. I think Thorns were only mentioned a couple of times, and that was well into halfway into the book. It didn't blur in. So without bludgeoning you guys on my dislike for this book, because I did dislike it, I'm struggling to find things that I liked beyond the fact that the start felt kind of strong. It felt good. Feyre was really a lovely character, and the ending, it spiced up a bit. The ending, the last 100 pages or so, there was some action. I was engrossed, I was intrigued, and it was the most enjoyable part of the book. They are my positives, but there's far too many negatives in this for me to outweigh anything else. I personally and subjectively don't understand why it's received the hype that it's received. I knew I wouldn't like it, and that's why I'd never read it. But I've got a very large Booktok platform, and so many people have been telling me to read it, begging me to read it, wanting me to join this fold. So I decided to take that leap, and I'd really hoped that it would prove me wrong, but it just didn't. It just didn't, and it fell flat. I'm kind of now looking at it of the mind that Booktok, Booktube, Bookstagram hypes up certain books so much. It puts them on such a high tier. If anyone doesn't like that book or those books, people don't tend to understand it. I've got hundreds of other books on my shelf. I do. Hundreds of other books. There's hundreds of books or thousands of books out there that we've not even discovered yet. And sometimes it's okay to let go of one to focus on another.
This is one that it just will never stick with me. It won't. I didn't unfortunately take anything from it apart from the things that I've spoken about here. And I've spoken in true honesty, in true kind of respectfulness of my own experience and my own feelings towards it. And I will always stand by that if you love it, if you love a book, if you love any book, I love that for you, because that is what makes reading fun. That is what makes reading good and enjoyable. But for me, unfortunately, ACOTAR, I think I'd probably rate 1.5, 2 stars at a push. It wasn't an enjoyable read. It wasn't a world that I felt connected to. I couldn't stand the characters. I think there's so many issues in there. It's unbelievable that are just being masked as cutesy and romantic. And unfortunately, I'm not going to join the ACOTAR hype train. Will I read the next one? Possibly, because I now own the series. Although the next, is it A Court of Mist and Fury is the next one? It's massive. It's huge. Will I ever get past my bitterness of ACOTAR? I don't know, because I genuinely really dislike that writing, and I really dislike how it made me feel. I really dislike the fact that I sat there so angry throughout a lot of it, and I really dislike the fact that there was so many holes. There we go. ACOTAR is done. It is over. I have ticked it off. Who'd have thought? I'm now going to try and settle into something that's a little bit cutesy, a little bit just like way by the by, just so that I don't fall into a tragic reading hole. I hope you enjoyed this experience of coming on a journey with me, of reading a whole book and seeing my behind the scenes thoughts. I do understand that some of my initial thoughts on it, I was questioning things that were later tied up in the book. I know that, but I'm not going to remove them from this review just because I want you guys to see my honest thoughts and feelings throughout the entire process. So it does tie up in parts and things do end up making sense in part. But yeah, for the most part, ACOTAR, you didn't win me. And I wonder what book is going to be next.